You just got into a truck crash and now you're wondering, is the trucking company actually following safety rules when they're supposed to? And you're probably sitting there in a hospital bed. The insurance company has already reached out to you, and no one's told you yet if you even have a case. And until you know whether the company broke federal safety laws, what you need to know is you can't hold them accountable or get the compensation that you deserve. Hi, I'm Ted Spaulding. I'm a trucking lawyer here in Georgia, and I've been spending over 2 decades now investigating these types of crashes and proving exactly when trucking companies cut corners and aren't following the safety rules. This video, I'm going to walk you through the critical red flags that we look for so that you can protect your case, your recovery, and your future. I'm going to go through 4 steps that you need to know so you know how your case should be handled properly so you can prove that the trucking company is at fault ultimately for the wreck that you've just been in. So the first step or first red flag that you always want to look for in a trucking case is checking the driver's hours. So what do I mean there? Well, we're starting by looking at how many hours the driver had been driving before the wreck. It's a complicated system, so you have to know what the law is surrounding it. And this is all federal law that's then adopted by each state. So here in Georgia, they adopt the federal rules. So even if it's a common carrier that's only local and is not interstate, it's still following the same scheme. Well, what that is they have to have certain amount of hours on the road and then rest, and then more hours on the road and then more rest. So you're looking for the hours, not only the day of the wreck to see, it may flow into the night before in certain cases, but then looking back at least 7 days to see if they're exceeding their hours. But you got to understand, why is this important? Well, because these trucking companies are putting extreme pressure, especially here the past couple of years ever since COVID, because the industry has grown so much and there's been so much more money to be made, deliveries to be made. They're pushing for tighter and tighter deadlines. And this is where trucking companies and their drivers can try to get around the rules. And so what we do is we've got to focus on several different areas to learn the full picture. You want to pull driving logs. You want to pull the GPS systems records, okay? What we call it black box. There's like Qualcomm systems, other things. Fuel receipts are very helpful. All of those things, right? Because it tells the full story. So let me give you an example. I had a case in Atlanta where the logbook looked fine. The driver had been on the road for 5 hours, had taken the proper breaks the days and hours before. Everything looked fine. But then we pulled the black box and the data showed a completely different story. He had been driving for over 10 hours. And that's not just a mistake. That's dangerous. And it's often the first crack in the case. Now we've got a driver who is over the hours, faking logbooks to make it look like he's not. Where are the other safety violations? Well, that gets into our next step. And so the next step, step 2 or red flag number 2 was the truck itself even safe? Trucking companies are required to inspect their vehicles often. Okay, daily, quite frankly. And there's very specific rules on this. We're talking brakes, tires, lights, what's called conspicuity tape. So the taping, if it's a big, long trailer, does it have the proper taping where lights can reflect off it to see this big tractor trailer, right? All of these things, I mean, they're down to minute details. But when they skip the maintenance requirements to save time, because they've got deadlines, just like with the driving, people can get injured. I had a case in Macon where a client was hit by a truck with completely worn down brakes. It was unbelievable. The inspection record showed they hadn't been checked in over a year. The company said it was just bad luck. The records told a different story, by the way. If there's no paper trail or if everything looks a little too perfect, that's a red flag too. And so we had that in this scenario. Had a whole gap where no looking into the brakes, no inspections. And here we have a rear end collision that should have been different because the tractor should have stopped in time. There shouldn't have been any reason. Well, it's because the brakes weren't good. We had an inspector come out, expert, test the brakes. Sure enough, they were way, way below regulation. The next step, or red flag, number 3, is look into the driver's qualifications. And this is a hot topic right now, right? Because we've heard throughout the country this pushback on immigrants. So illegal alien immigrants, even some that aren't, that don't speak English, don't therefore have the proper qualifications, don't even know the rules of the road correctly, are getting in massive wrecks in these tractor trailers, hurting the public. So driver qualification is a big issue. In Georgia, truck drivers need to have a valid CDL. That's across the country, quite frankly. But they often don't have proper training even when they have a CDL. Maybe they have taken time off. Maybe they have been just so busy they've been missing some certain training, or maybe they're very new. I've had several cases where they're trainees and then they don't have the proper supervision, but yet they're out on the road. We once found a driver who had a valid license, but he had zero training. And this was a tanker truck he was hauling. That's like giving someone a chainsaw and saying, good luck. If the company didn't run a background check or skipped training, that's a safety violation and it puts you at risk. And if it's the reason or part of the reason for why they end up violating the rules of the road and causing a significant wreck, then they need to be held accountable. So we need to look into the driver's qualifications. You never know what you're going to get. So here's our next step. Red flag number 4 is pull the digital evidence. And this is the biggest one, in my opinion, especially nowadays, because you've got multiple potential sources of digital evidence inside of these trucks. And they can be a wealth of information as to what went wrong causing this wreck. And it is great evidence for your case. So modern trucks, we've talked about this a little bit earlier, black boxes, as they're called. These are electronic logging devices, number 1, built into the truck itself. Then you can also have add-on devices, Qualcomm type devices, when you've got the dispatcher reaching out and giving things electronically or otherwise. So you can have multiple areas where you can pull data. You can have, obviously nowadays, video evidence of the wreck itself and what the driver was doing before the wreck. It is a wealth of information out there. We can prove texting, if they were texting while driving or using one of these devices at the time. We can break it down with this data as to when they hit the brakes, how fast they were going in the second, and it breaks it down. It's like a second before the wreck, half a second before the wreck, 3 seconds, 5 seconds before the wreck, and see the timeline of it. Be able to prove they never hit their brake, prove how fast they were going. Maybe they were speeding up into the wreck. I mean, it is insane to show exactly what happened, and it's great, great evidence. Here's the problem, though. If you wait too long, that evidence can go away. It's gone. You might be able to get some of it, but not the other portions of it. And again, it might be a puzzle that puts it all together. You might not get it all in one device. So if you're not, you need all the different ones. But it can be written over. It doesn't get preserved long enough if you haven't put them on notice that they gotta preserve it. All these things can go wrong. It gets written over very quickly if they just go right back out onto the road with that truck. So you've got to move quickly. This is why oftentimes in these truck wreck cases, you want a lawyer immediately, so these things can be requested, preserved, and pulled by experts. The 5th and final step or red flag is investigating the company's history. This is a real big one too. It's very, very easy to do because the history of inspections by the federal government, which are done at least once a year, if not more often, how many wrecks they've had, penalties, they get points and it's like a point system depending on what caused the wreck and those things. The investigation then by not only the company but the government itself into the wreck also will be revealed, and these things stack up, and the DOT keeps all of these records on the company, and you can pull this online with the DOT number and do a lot of the investigating of this right there on the computer. And we do this almost day one or day two at the latest of getting a new case. We're immediately looking up the company on the DOT safety website, pulling all that information, printing it out, starting to get a feel for what's the safety record of this company. And you'd be shocked at the safety record of some of these companies. They're atrocious sometimes. They're cutting corners, and when they do, they're going to get caught, and it's going to be on their background report. It's like you're in elementary school with a report card. How many days did you miss? And these sorts of things. It tracks all of it. So we pull this immediately. Let me give you an example. We had a case in Augusta where the trucking company had dozens of violations before the wreck that we were representing a client on. And this history helped prove that they were just a very careless company. They were reckless. Jurors don't like to hear this stuff. This is exactly why we have such a robust system through the federal government and then the states as well to try to protect the driving public from bad companies that are going to throw these trucks and drivers out on the road and injure or kill people. They've got to keep these safety regulations in mind and in force and actually go through with them. And if not, proving that they're a bad company is very, very helpful for your case. So you may be wondering, why does all of this matter? Well, because if the trucking company skipped protocols, they can be held accountable individually. And that is a huge thing for you. That means compensation for your medical bills, lost income, your pain and suffering, real compensation, peace of mind that comes with knowing that it's being taken seriously. But none of that happens unless you prove it. And that starts asking the right questions that we just went through today and collecting the right records and evidence from day one. And hopefully this video has helped you understand those steps, because it's good for you to know as a client, because you really do need a lawyer in these types of cases, as you can see, to know what your lawyer should be doing so you can be proactive in the handling of your case. Hey, have we done these things? What is the safety record? Tell me what you found. Those sorts of things. Listen, if you're overwhelmed, I get it. You've just been through a traumatic event. You're hurt, you're exhausted, and now you're being told that you got to dig into all of this stuff, look into it, you got to hurry up and do it right away. That's why having a lawyer right away in these types of cases matter tremendously. And please understand, I'm not saying this just to try to get your business. It's really important, no matter who that lawyer is, that you get one, and you get one quickly in these cases. You're always, by the way, behind the 8 ball in these trucking cases. Why? Because the trucking company and then their insurance company insures them. They have what's called go teams, an expert, a lawyer on standby. The moment they hear about a wreck, they're off and out to the scene, and they're typically there within hours. So we're already behind the 8 ball if you call us the next day, much less a couple of days later. They were out there right at the scene, talking to witnesses, taking photographs themselves because they know exactly what to look for, all of these things. So they are already ahead of the game information-wise. So again, I know that's why it sounds scary, but this is why it's so important that you get a lawyer. A lawyer like myself knows these steps, knows the red flags, can do all of this for you so you can get the treatment you need and get better. At least remember, my philosophy is always at least call a lawyer. You're never required to hire one, so just because I tell you you need to, you don't have to listen to me. But call one, talk to them, get some advice. It'll make you feel a lot better. And before I let you go, one last story. A family came to us, I talked about this one a little bit before, after a wreck with an 18-wheeler near Augusta. The company swore the driver followed all the rules, typically do, right? But when we got the evidence, it showed worn out brakes, no rest breaks taken by the driver, 13 hours behind the wheel. Safety protocols were just ignored. They weren't just missed. And because we found this proof, the family got the compensation that they deserved. And if you want to know whether the crash that you've been in that has turned your life upside down could have been prevented, it starts with asking these same questions. Let's get you answers. And here's what you absolutely don't want to miss. In my next video, it's called, Is It Worth It to Hire a Lawyer After a Minor Car Accident? I'll break down why even a fender bender, especially with a truck, can have hidden risks and what you can lose by thinking everything's going to be okay and I can just handle it on my own. If you want to protect your rights, avoid costly mistakes, and make sure you aren't left paying out of pocket, you need to watch that video right now. I'll see you over there.